A routed interface is a layer 3 interface that forwards IP version 4 and IP version 6 packets to another device using static or dynamic routing protocols. You can use the layer 3 interfaces for IP routing or inter-VLAN routing of layer 2 traffic. This would be an example of a switch connecting to a router. In this case, switch A establishes a trunk link between router B. Switch A then shares the VLANs 10, 20, and 30 over that link. Router B makes routed interfaces for each one of those VLANs so that it can route between those individual networks. There are multiple types of routed interfaces. For instance, I can have what's called a layer 3 port, where I'm only running layer 3 and talk over IP between the two devices. I can also run what we would call a sub-interface, where I actually take that physical interface and break it up into multiple sub-interfaces, like the diagram on the slide that we just saw. So in this case, for instance, I could take a trunk link into the switch and break it up into multiple VLANs, 10, 20, and 30, as you can see by the .10, .20, and .30, and then route between those VLANs based on the information that's coming in on those routed sub-interfaces. The other thing I can do is actually take multiple layer 3 ports and virtually bond them together in what we call a port channel or an ether channel. So what this allows me to have is a more redundant link that if one of the two physical links fails, my logical link still stays up, and it allows me to have more bandwidth as well as more redundancy. The last way that you commonly see a routed interface in a data center is what we would call a switched virtual interface, or an SVI. This SVI is basically a virtual routed interface that will come up inside of a VLAN, and it will take the packets inside of that VLAN and forward them to the routing engine so that I can route between these individual networks or virtual networks inside the same switch. So if I have a server that's plugged into VLAN 10 and another server that's plugged into VLAN 20 and they want to communicate to each other, I might create a SVI or a switch virtual interface on VLAN 10 and VLAN 20 so that they can route between each other and communicate with each other. Please join me for the next lesson, 10.2, Understanding Switch Virtual Interfaces.